Okay, this video will be an added bonus, I guess you could say, of the verse by verse through the Epistle of James, where I mentioned here, ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. I thought I did a video on defining the last days, and come to find out I didn't. And so we're going to look at that, last days, and there's a couple other words that goes along with last days. And so we're going to look at that as far as the last days. Now there's an idea, a deceptive ploy that Satan uses, is that he takes a Bible word and gives it the wrong definition. Okay, and that's called catachresis. So catachresis, it kind of sounds like a feline fanatic or a catholic or catacombs or Cato or so forth and so on. All them cat words. Now the AI, and sometimes this AI definitions or ideas are pretty good, but then obviously sometimes they're pretty bad. But this says catachresis is a figure of speech that involves the deliberate or unintentional misuse of a word or phrase in a context that is contrary to the conventional usage. Okay, and so, that's what catachresis is. It's giving the wrong definition to a word. Now, in the 1828, it says it's an abuse of a trope or of words. Okay, so it's an abuse of words. And so often what you need to do is when you're talking to people and they use a word, a Bible word, you want to ask them, what do they mean by that? And when you get these words defined according to the Bible, not according to Strong's Concordance, not according to some Bible dictionary, according to how the Bible uses the word or words, in this case, last days. You see, a definition is developed by the usage of the word within its context. That's if a person wants to be honest. If you define the word predestination, it will actually expose Calvinism for what it's about. The same with the word election. Okay, those two words are defined incorrectly in order to make the Calvinist believe his system, and this is a deceptive ploy. Catachresis, like catholic, like feline fanatics. So obviously it takes some time to do this, and if a person doesn't want to take the time, that's the day and age we live in. They'll not endure sound doctrine, so you can run along and go see what your Christian celebrity says about, your favorite verse or something. But I'm going to run through it here rather quickly, and you can pause it to look at these. Here's the 8 occurrences of the words last days. So we're going to run through them as far as the last days. So this is an advantage of this program when you're looking for a phrase. So you can see it's found 8 times, 8 verses, 8 occurrences, 8 verses, 8 chapters, in 8 books. So here it is, Jacob. Now Jacob is close to dying, and so he's going to give his final admonitions to his sons. And he says that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. So he is prophesying of events over 3,000 years in the future, maybe even closer to 4,000 years. So, and it's kind of interesting if you look at this and you see what he says about Dan. Dan shall be a serpent by the way. And Dan is one of the tribes that are not mentioned in the 12 tribes in Revelation 7. Why? Dan's a serpent. The second one is in Isaiah 2. And this one we get some characteristics of the time period called the last days. Okay, the word that Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem. So these are about Judah and Jerusalem, so that's one characteristic. And it shall come to pass in the last days. What's coming to pass? That the mountain of the Lord's house shall be exalted in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. So that's pretty much tells anybody who understands this passage that that is the millennial time period. The Lord is from Jerusalem. So the last days, this characteristics will be the beginning of the millennium. Micah is a parallel and a contemporary, so you'll see that he does the same thing. He uses the words in the same context. Okay, now in this occurrence in Acts 2, Peter is talking to the men of Judea, and he is referencing the prophet Joel. So, in order to understand what he's saying, then we'll need to go back to the prophet Joel also. But what does he say? And it shall come to pass in the last days, saith God, I'll pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Okay, that did not take place in Acts 2. And your young men shall see visions, your old men shall dream dreams. Okay, and on my servants and my handmaids I will pour out in those days of my spirit. A person might say, well, that did happen in Acts 2. Okay, we'll let that one go. And they shall prophesy. Now here's where you know exactly what he's talking about. I will show wonders in heaven above, signs in the earth beneath, blood and fire, vapor of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness, the moon into blood, before that great and notable day of the Lord comes. So this is clearly the second coming. So what comes before it? The sixth seal judgment, where all this takes place. This did not take place in 70 AD, and it did not take place in Acts 2. So this right here is what the Apostle Peter was referencing. And it says here, it should come to pass afterward. Now, in Acts, he said last days. Here, it just says afterward, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Okay, all flesh, all. That hasn't happened yet. Okay, so that didn't happen in Acts 2, didn't happen in 70 AD. And you got this similar, that's similar, that's similar, that's similar. And again, before the great and terrible day of the Lord. So now he doesn't use the word last days here. Joel did not, but Peter did in Acts 2. Okay, now this is the only occurrence by Paul when he's writing to the church. And they said, this know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. So if this is sitting inside the church age, perilous times shall come after the church age, and it's called the last days. So, yes, and these perilous times may even come at the latter time of the church. You'll see here that Paul told Timothy, now the Spirit speaketh expressly, that in the latter times some shall depart from faith. So this is the latter times of the church age. And then this is what's going to follow the church age, is the last days. Okay, so Hebrews is the epistle of Paul the Apostle to the Hebrews. Not Jewish Christians. Okay, not Gentiles who think they're Israelites. God, who at sundry times and diverse manners spake in time past unto the fathers by the prophets. Okay, different methods. Hath in these last days. So the writer, Hebrews, is pushed into the last days. So what occurs in the last days? Spoken unto us by his Son. Spoken unto us. Who? Hebrews. By his Son. Okay, by his Son. This was recorded in chapter 12, where he is speaking to them in chapter 12, speaking from heaven. So the writer here is pushed into the future. So when you read through this epistle of the Hebrews, take note of all the Jewish ideas and doctrines. Okay, in James 5 is the next one, which where we start off in a springboard. And in James 5, the characteristic is that all rich people, men, women, all rich, are condemned or damned to hell. Okay, or ye have condemned and killed the just. They are in the court system killing the righteous, and it's called the day of slaughter. So, but when you read this epistle, it forces you to consider dispensations. The last occurrence of the last days is in 2 Peter chapter 3. And of course, this is a general epistle of Peter. And this would be generally written to the Jews of the last days. He said, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers walking after their own lust. Okay, and so that's just a characteristic, and of course that's going to be in the tribulation time. Now, with all these characteristics, what we read so far, the last days will be the tribulation time period toward the end and the beginning of the millennium, the 1,000-year reign of Christ. Now, there's another term I want to look at that goes along with it. Now, you might ask the question, last days of what? Now, that will make sense when we get all these definitions together. So, what do we know about the tribulation time period? Where did that idea originate? What is that tribulation time period a part of? The first occurrence of tribulation, the word, is Moses talking to Israel. And he says, when thou art in tribulation, and all these things are come upon thee, and you got to read the context to see what he's talking about. Even in the latter days, if thou turn to the Lord thy God, thou shalt be obedient unto his voice. Okay, in the latter time, or in the latter days, it says here. It doesn't say last days, it says the latter days. And then when you scroll up, you'll see what it's talking about as far as the Jews, the nation of Israel, will be serving pagan deities. Now, in the New Testament, the word tribulation, okay, this is a generic idea, tribulation or persecution towards anybody. This one is great tribulation, and that's in Matthew 24:21. So, do we find Israel in the context? Well, yeah, we do. Here's Judea. Yes. Do we find Daniel's prophecy? Yes, there's Daniel's prophecy. Okay, so our characteristics are matching very well. Abomination of desolation, that's the fifth seal, judgment of a human sacrifice in the tribulation time period. Now, immediately after the tribulation, there's what Peter was talking about. Immediately after the tribulation of Israel, this is what Peter was talking about in Acts 2, and Joel was mentioning in Joel chapter 2. So that matches. Okay, then Mark 13 is a parallel here. Okay, and so that's basically the tribulation ones. And then if we go to the end into Revelation, we'll see great tribulation. And then these are the ones who came out of great tribulation. Who are they? Who are these people? These are the 12 tribes of Israel. And you'll see that Dan is missing. Man, Jacob had that thing pretty well pegged, didn't he? So the last days of what? I'm saying here the last days of the tribulation and the great tribulation. Now, where did the idea of the tribulation originate? This is what you want to do when you talk to people. Okay, in Matthew 24, We discover where that word is mentioned in verse 21, Great Tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. That didn't happen in 70 AD. Okay, and that didn't happen. It hasn't happened yet. So there's Judea. So we do have Israel. And then here's Daniel the prophet. So where did the idea of the tribulation originate? It originated from Daniel's 70 weeks. And what gospel will be preached during this time? The gospel of the kingdom. The idea of the tribulation originated in Daniel 9:24. And it says that these 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, that's Israel, and thy holy city, that's Jerusalem, not the church. Jesus summarized it where you forgive until 70 times 7. There's another set of words that also accompanies this idea, a little while. Refers to the same time period unless it's mentioned within time. So this occurs 16 times, but I'm going to look at these as quickly as we can. Okay, the first occurrence is Job, and much of Job is writing about the tribulation. You'll figure that out if you go to James 5, and they talk about the patience of Job. And they are exalted for a little while. The they would be the evil, the wicked, but are gone and brought low. That'd be the rich. The rich are made low in James. They are taken out of the way. Okay, so there's that one. Psalm 37:10. For yet a little while, and the wicked shall not be, yea, thou shalt consider diligently his place. Isaiah 63. The people of thy holiness have possessed it, but a little while. Our adversaries have trodden down thy sanctuary. Doctrinally, you take that to Revelation 11. Jeremiah, he gives the characteristic of Babylon with this time period called a little while. Haggai, he said, for thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land. Okay, that'd be the 6th seal judgment. So that matches nice, pretty as could be. Now here in John 16, the Lord, and in this conversation, the Lord and the apostles mentioned a little while 7 times. Now, of course, that number is significant. A little while, and ye shall not see me, and again a little while, and ye shall see me, but I go to my Father. Then said some of his disciples unto him, what is this that he saith, a little while, and ye shall not see me, and again a little while, ye shall see me, and because I go to the Father. They said, therefore, what is this that he saith, a little while? We cannot tell what he saith. Now notice, I love this. They're asking each other what a word means, or a set of words means, without asking the one who said them. That's like a Greeky friar going to a lexicon, asking somebody else, what's that word mean? I'm going to read Greek. I read Hebrew. I'm Mark. I read Hebrew. I read Greek. Why don't you ask the Lord to explain it? Now, Jesus knew they were desirous to ask him and said to them, do ye inquire among yourselves of that I said a little while? It's like, you're asking somebody else what I said and trying to ask the meaning of it. Why don't you ask me? And that's exactly what Greeky friars do. They run to Greek, they run to Hebrew, and they're asking this guy, and this Dr. Dryas does said this, and Pastor Malfungus. What is associated with a little while? Verily I say unto you, that ye shall weep and lament, Lamentations, but the world shall rejoice, and ye shall be sorrowful, and your sorrow shall be turned into joy. That's a reference to the tribulation. A woman, when she is in travail, hath sorrow. You'll see that in Revelation 12. Because her hour is come. But as soon as she is delivered of the child, she remembereth no more the anguish for joy that a man is born into the world. That's Revelation 12. And lo and behold, amazingly, the last occurrence of a little while is in Hebrews. Yes, right. See, for yet a little while, and he that shall come and will not tarry. That's written doctrinally to people who, if they know the time period, depending when they were made righteous, they got to endure for 3.5 years tops. And it's called a little while. Well, when we get to the end of the little while, it's called the end. And so many of the times the words the end are referring to, the end of all flesh here. And it's within a context. The first one, when we find it doctrinally, you got to go way down to Ezekiel, and we see it here mentioned many times. Now remember, Ezekiel was contemporary with Daniel, and it says here, and in the end is come upon the four corners of the land. Now is the end come upon thee, and I will send mine anger upon thee, and will judge thee according to thy ways. So the end is talking about judgment on Israel. An end is come. The end is come. It watches for thee. Behold, it is come. Now if we go to Daniel, let's see if we find that term where it's in the place where the idea of Daniel's 70th week originates. Daniel 9:24, this is where the idea originated. 70 weeks are determined, upon thy people, that's Israel, and upon thy holy city, that's Jerusalem. You'll see that in the context. And these are 6 or 7 characteristics when it's done. And of course, it hasn't happened yet. No, it didn't happen in 70 AD. These have not been fulfilled. All 7 have not been fulfilled. Now, notice there's a couple words that are associated with this time period called the end. The end. City, sanctuary, covenant, abominations, oblation. That's all Israel. That's nothing to do with the church. This is why the church must be taken out before God resumes the 70th week. Has to. Then if we run to the end of Daniel 12, we'll see the end. Even the time of the end, it's called a time of the end. And then he says, seal the time of the end. And then the book ends, the end, the end. So man, this is just common. Here you have it in Matthew by Jesus. Jesus was a prophet to the nation of Israel. And he talks about endureth to the end shall be saved. Who is that? Who's he talking to? Christians? He ain't talking to Christians. Talking to Jews. And so then here's the famous Pentecostal verse where they want to keep people in bondage. Oh boy. Yes, oh boy. They never read verse 14, the gospel of the kingdom. They don't read that. And they don't read verse 15. And of course they are going to be the ones who determine if you have endured to the end. That's how you keep people in bondage. This is all Israel. So what is it the end of? Mark 13 is the same idea. Now, if we run to Hebrews 3, who's he talking to? Hebrews, the end, the end, the end. That's what he's talking to. He's talking to Hebrews. Now, these are many of the references that I've used, and in Matthew 24, he's encouraging Israel, Judea, to flee to the mountains, and he's encouraged them to preach the gospel of the kingdom, not the gospel of the grace of God, to the end. There's going to be abomination. When you see that human sacrifice in the Jewish temple, you better run. And you see the Sabbath day? See that? That's Israel. Great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world. Somebody else said that. When you go to Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, and at that time shall Michael stand up. You'll see him in Revelation 12. The great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, Israel. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. Now, if that isn't a match on Matthew 24, I don't know what is. I mean, that's just clear as a bell to me. Just clear as a bell. Let's try this one. 1 Corinthians 15. I want to, ooh boy, yeah, that's Paul defining the term for us in the resurrection chapter. So that he says, the first resurrection has 3 parts. It's got the first fruits, it's got the main harvest, and the gleanings. Every man in his own order. Christ the first fruits. Afterward, they that are Christ at his coming. He's coming in the clouds, and we're going to meet him in the air. Then cometh the end, when he shall have delivered up the kingdom to God. That matches the last days. Yeah, the end. See all these words, how easy it is if we just take our time and look at the word. So a complete biblical definition can be developed from the usage of these words, last days, a little while, tribulation, the end, to be the last days of Daniel's 70 weeks, is associated with Jacob's trouble, which will be the end of the prophecy, Daniel's 70 week, that lasts a little while of the Great Tribulation. See how does that not make sense? Oh man, that makes sense, just as pretty as could be. And all we did was just precisely took a little time and looked up the words, and then we'll look at one more place. Jeremiah talked about it. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. See, look at that. The tribulation is called Daniel's 70th week and Jacob's trouble. It is not called the church's trouble or the Christian's trouble, because we have the wonderful mystery of the pre-tribulation rapture of the church. So I hope this was a help to you, where you define these words. Just take some time, look them up in English, find the first occurrence, and then run them through. You only had to do 8 here. Tribulation, this is the first occurrence, and it's talking about the latter times of Israel. And the Great Tribulation, all 3 of these are dealing with Israel. And because that idea originated in Daniel's 70 weeks, which will be a little while, but it's going to be the end. So I hope this was a help to you. When you get these definitions clearly from Scripture, then the false ideas have a difficulty to maintain a hold on people. So, as always, I welcome your comments, and I trust that we will endure sound doctrine. There we go. That's what we need to be doing. Endure sound doctrine. May the Lord bless you.